The stadium clock shows 0:12. But the number doesn't matter yet. Because right now, the most dangerous thing on the field isn't the defense. It's the play call. Joe Montana breaks the huddle and walks toward the line of scrimmage. Helmet on, eyes forward. The noise is deafening, but it feels distant, like it belongs to another game, another place. The call that just came in is safe. Too safe. Designed not to lose. That's the problem. Across the line, the defense is already set. They're showing pressure from the edges. Linebackers creeping forward. Safeties hovering like they're waiting for a mistake. This is a defense that smells fear, and they're certain they've found it. The sideline is frantic. Coaches waving. Players shouting reminders. Someone yelling the clock. 12 seconds. Montana hears it. He ignores it. He steps under center and scans the defense slowly, deliberately. This is the moment quarterbacks rush. This is where hands shake, voices crack, and mechanics fall apart. Montana's don't. He sees something subtle. Not a blown coverage. Not an obvious mismatch. A safety leaning too far inside. A corner cheating half a step. A linebacker ready to explode instead of react. They're expecting the safe play. Montana exhales. He straightens slightly and changes everything. A quick word. A small hand signal. Almost invisible. The receiver nearest him looks surprised. Just for a split second. Then nods. He adjusts his stance. The offensive line resets their feet. The defense doesn't notice. They're too confident. The crowd roars, sensing something, but not knowing what. The referee backs away. The center lowers his head. Montana pauses, not because he's unsure, because he's waiting for the defense to settle into the mistake they've already chosen. The clock ticks. 11, 10. Montana finally calls for the snap. The ball hits his hands and the world explodes. The defense comes exactly as expected. Full speed, no hesitation. A blitz crashes through the right side. A defender breaking free almost instantly. The pocket collapses. Montana doesn't flinch. He takes one step back, then slides left just enough to stay alive. His eyes never drop. His shoulders stay square. His body stays calm while chaos closes in. A defender dives, missing his legs by inches. Montana plants his foot. The receiver is not open. Not yet. This is the part nobody talks about. The half second where doubt could still win. Where the quarterback could pull the ball down, eat the sack, and say it just didn't work. Montana waits. The safety bites. Just a step. That's all it takes. Montana releases the ball. It's not a bullet. It's not a prayer. It's a decision. The pass arcs into space that didn't exist a second ago. The receiver breaks late, turning his head at the exact moment the ball arrives. Hands up. Catch. Both feet down. The clock hits 0-0 as the receiver is driven backward. For a moment, nobody reacts. Not the defense, not the crowd, not even Montana. Then the official raises his arms. Touchdown. The stadium detonates. Montana stands still, watching it unfold, breathing evenly. 12 seconds ago, this game was supposed to end safely. Instead, it ended decisively. And the defense that thought it had him figured out is now staring at the scoreboard, trying to understand when control slipped away. It slipped away the moment Joe Montana changed the play, because the most dangerous thing on a football field isn't speed. It's a quarterback who knows when not to be safe. The noise doesn't stop. It swells, crashes, folds in on itself. Players collide. Coaches run onto the field. Somewhere on the sideline, a headset hits the ground. But Joe Montana doesn't move. He stays exactly where he is, hands resting on his hips, eyes fixed downfield, not on the celebration, but on the defense, on their faces. That's where the real story is. Confusion first, then disbelief, then the slow realization that this wasn't luck. The defender who blitzed is already shaking his head. He looks back toward the sideline, palms up, asking a question no one can answer. How did he know? Because the truth is uncomfortable. The play didn't work because it was brilliant. It worked because it was obvious to Joe Montana. Minutes earlier, when the call came in from the sideline, Montana knew immediately what the defense would do. Safe call. Conservative look. Predictable timing. The defense loves predictable timing. They had shown it all night. Every big moment. The same pattern. Overload pressure. Force the quick throw. Trust the coverage behind it. It had worked on other quarterbacks. It almost worked again. Almost. Montana had seen it too many times. Not just on film. Not just in meetings. But in moments exactly like this. When defenses think urgency equals recklessness. Back on the sideline, Bill Walsh finally reaches him. You changed it, Walsh says. It's not a question. Montana nods once. They were coming. Walsh looks back at the field. The replay is already rolling on the stadium screen. Slow motion. Arrows. Circles. On screen it looks clean. Controlled. Logical. It didn't feel that way. In the huddle earlier, Montana hadn't said much. He never does. He doesn't need speeches when seconds matter. But he noticed the way his receiver shifted his weight, the way the line exhaled just a little too hard. Pressure doesn't just attack defenses, it leaks inward. That's when Montana stepped in. Not loudly, not dramatically, but decisively. He didn't override the play because he wanted glory. He did it because safe would have failed. The defense had already committed to the idea that the offense wouldn't challenge them. That belief hardened their movements, sharpened their angles, and locked them into a mistake. On the field now, the officials are still sorting things out. The defense is arguing about alignment, about contact, about anything that might make this feel less inevitable. Montana listens to none of it. He takes a sip of water, adjusts his chin strap. His breathing is steady, almost slow. Someone on the bench leans toward him. Man, that was crazy. Montana shrugs. It was there. That's the part people miss. This wasn't chaos to him. It was clarity. When the ball snapped, everything he expected happened. The blitz, the collapse, the defender breaking free, the safety stepping forward. The window didn't appear by accident. It appeared because the defense chose it. The receiver jogs over, still wide-eyed. I thought you were throwing it away, he admits. Montana looks at him. You turned when you needed to. That's all. Trust isn't built in the air. It's built long before the snap. Across the field, the defensive coordinator stares at the turf. He knows what just happened. He knows the call was aggressive, but correct. What he didn't account for was a quarterback who wouldn't be rushed by the clock or seduced by safety. 12 seconds is supposed to compress decisions. For Joe Montana, it expanded them. It slowed the game down enough for him to see what others couldn't. That's why defenders hate moments like this. Because you can pressure the pocket, you can disguise coverage, you can win physically, but you can't rush a mind that refuses to hurry. As the teams reset and the stadium buzz settles into something like awe, Montana finally looks up at the scoreboard. He doesn't smile. He doesn't nod. He simply turns back toward the bench, already moving past the moment. Because for Joe Montana, the play didn't end 12 seconds after the snap. It ended the instant he changed it. And now, with the game tilted permanently in his favor, the rest is just noise. The stadium doesn't quiet down all at once. It fades in layers. First the screaming, then the arguing, then the stunned silence of people trying to understand what they just witnessed. Joe Montana walks toward the sideline while the officials sort out the aftermath. He moves slowly, deliberately, like the game is still going, and he's just waiting for the next snap. Around him, chaos. Receivers are jumping. Linemen are hugging. Coaches are shouting into headsets that aren't connected to anything anymore. Somewhere behind him, the defense is still pointing, still talking, still searching for a reason that makes sense. Montana doesn't join any of it. He takes his helmet off and breathes, not deeply, not dramatically, just enough. Across the field, the defense gathers near their sideline, helmets tilted back, hands on hips. Their body language tells the story better than words ever could. They weren't beaten physically. They were beaten early. The moment Joe Montana changed the play, the outcome was already in motion. That's the part defenders hate admitting, because it means the loss didn't happen at the snap. It happened in the space between recognition and reaction. In the moments that followed, reporters would call it instinct. Some would call it courage. Others would call it genius. Montana would call it what felt right. Later, much later, when the locker room finally settles, and the noise drops to a hum, Montana sits at his stall with his pads still on. He hasn't checked his phone. He hasn't replayed the moment on the small television looping highlights in the corner. He's thinking about the defense, about the safety who leaned too far inside, about the linebacker who committed before he should have, about how predictable urgency can become. A teammate drops onto the bench next to him. You saw it, didn't you? The teammate asks. Montana nods. They showed it. That's always been the difference. Most quarterbacks react to what defenses do. Joe Montana reacts to what defenses believe, and belief is louder than movement. When the play call came in, Montana already knew what the defense expected. He could feel it in the way they aligned, in the confidence of their posture, in the certainty of their pressure. They believed the clock had won. Montana didn't. That refusal to accept the clock's authority is what separates moments like this from highlights that disappear a week later. The audible itself was simple. That's what makes it dangerous. No trickery, no desperation, no miracle design. Just a shift that forced the defense to stay aggressive when patience would have saved them. They chose aggression. Montana chose space. In the locker room, Bill Walsh addresses the team. His voice cuts through the residual buzz, steady and sharp. He talks about execution, about discipline, about trust. Then he looks at Montana. That's why, Walsh says. That's why we do it this way. Montana doesn't respond. He never does in these moments. Because he knows something Walsh doesn't need to say. Plays like that can't be coached. They can only be allowed. Allowed by preparation. Allowed by trust. Allowed by a system that doesn't punish calm when panic seems justified. Outside the locker room, the narrative has already taken shape. Analysts slow the play down frame by frame. They draw lines. They circle defenders. They debate whether the audible was risky or reckless. They miss the real risk entirely. The risk wasn't changing the play. The risk was running it. Safe would have walked the defense directly into the outcome they wanted.
Montana knew it. The defense knew it. Only one side acted on it. Years later, a defensive coordinator from that game would admit something quietly during an interview that almost nobody noticed. "We had the right call," he said, "for the situation." Then he paused. "We just didn't account for him." That sentence follows Montana for the rest of his career. Account for him. You can plan for arm strength. You can plan for footwork. You can plan for tendencies. But how do you plan for a quarterback who refuses to let urgency speed him up? As Montana's career unfolds, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Late games, tight scores, no margin, and always the same feeling on the opposing sideline. The game isn't over yet, but it's slipping. Defenders will later say the worst part wasn't the throw, it was the wait. The moment when Montana held the ball just long enough for certainty to turn into doubt. That's where games are decided, not in explosions, in hesitation. This play, 12 seconds after an audible, becomes one of those quiet reference points around the league. Coaches show it in meeting rooms. Quarterbacks rewind it late at night, not to copy the throw, but to study the posture, the calm. The refusal to be rushed by a situation designed to rush you. Because what Montana did wasn't flashy, it was final. When asked years later about changing plays at the line, Montana answered the same way every time. You just don't want to give the defense what it's waiting for. That's the lesson. Not bravery, not brilliance. Awareness. 12 seconds is supposed to erase options. Joe Montana used it to create one. The ball was snapped. The defense committed. The window opened. And when it did, Montana didn't hesitate. Because the decision had already been made. The clock didn't beat him. The pressure didn't move him. The moment didn't overwhelm him. He changed the play. And 12 seconds later, everything changed with it. That's why this moment still matters. Not because of the score. Not because of the celebration. But because it shows what real control looks like when the game tries to take it from you. Joe Montana didn't win by doing something extraordinary. He won by refusing to do what everyone expected. And in a sport built on reaction, that quiet defiance became his signature. The defense never recovered. The clock expired. And a standard, once again, was set.